Alright, so here's this week's weekly nightfall. It's the Glassway. I'm doing a solo flawless master run with Sentinel Titan. Primarily because we've got the acute void burn. So picking a void 3.0 subclass works well with that. And then we've also got attrition for the weekly modifier, which means you don't get any base health regen unless you go and pick up one of those white wells of light that drop randomly from certain enemies when you kill them. But it's not a super reliable way to heal yourself unless you're really up in enemies' faces, playing close quarters where you can just kind of automatically pick them up as you're, fighting. You do have to play a lot of this nightfall at range, which means you're not going to be able to go and pick up those wells of light. So usually when togetherness or attrition is the modifier, I try to come up with a build that allows me to survive when I don't have my base recovery working as intended. So Void Titan is a good choice because you've got rally barricades or towering. In this case I'm using rally, so I've got overshields on demand from Bastion, I guess it is. So yeah, it's not going to heal me, but it's going to give me an overshield. And this season overshield's got a buff or a fix, supposedly for I don't know how long. I don't know if it's been for the last 3 or 4 seasons that Void 3.0 overshields weren't working as intended, and they're only giving you like 25% damage resistance instead of 50. Now it's 50 or something like that. Don't quote me on it. You might have to check, but I think that's what I heard, was that the DR is now 50% from overshields, which is pretty nice, and I did feel quite a bit tankier than normal. And this is actually my first run with Titan on the Glassway. Doing it solo, I mean. The first time I did this was with Night Stalker, Graviton forfeit, and the second time I did it was on Stormcaller with the Stag. And the Stag Rift was pretty much letting me, stand in Belmont's Void Blast and not die, so that was pretty easy. And then the time after that I did it with Night Stalker again with Gyrfalcons at the end of last season before the Volatile round changed to the exotic. And I was very tempted to go with Gyrfalcons again because I've been having a lot of fun with that this season with all the with the Volatile rounds. But I just did that in my last video on Birthplace of the Vile. And like I said, I've already solo flawlessed this Nightfall twice already with Night Stalker, and not a single run with Titan yet. And Titan's my main, really, so I felt I owed it to myself to at least challenge myself to do it with Titan. And I thought it was going to be a little bit harder. Night Stalker is a bit slower of a process, but it's safer in general because you can get away from the fight in the boss fight when you get surrounded by wyverns and overload minotaurs and stuff. You can kind of evade it. And with Warlock, you've got especially with the Stag Rift, you can survive quite a bit. But yeah, I wanted to try with Sentinel. I'm using Heart of Inmost Light, Vortex Grenades with Echo of Undermining, and the other fragment that makes them last longer. So basically my grenades are kind of my bread and butter to this build. I'm also using... Oh, I'm not using Echo of Instability. I was on a previous run where I died. I was using a Void primary weapon so that I can benefit off of Volatile rounds, but I found it wasn't really necessary. because I wanted to use Osteostrega, seeing as we've got SMGs in the anti-champion mod mix this season for overloads, and I really like Osteo, and I wanted to play with it. So that meant I was going to be doing a little less void weapon damage, which means I didn't really need to waste a fragment on volatile rounds. Not only that, but I find with Controlled Demolition, you can make targets volatile on demand pretty much, especially with Heart of Inmost Light, because you can just toss out your shield or a grenade, and then all of a sudden whoever it touches is volatile. Yeah, you're not going to get those crazy like volatile explosions like 1 millisecond after the next millisecond, like on Gyrfalcons if you're using like a 900 RPM SMG or machine gun. But the target is still volatile, and they'll explode and do area of effect damage, and it kind of negates the purpose of volatile rounds on your weapon anyway, because chances are whatever you hit with your shield throw or shield bash, in this case I'm using shield throw, whatever I hit with shield throw or my grenade is pretty much gonna die anyways. And if it didn't die, then it's going to be left standing volatile, which means that they're just going to be super quick to kill. And with the fragment Echo of Instability, you only get 5 seconds of volatile rounds, so it's really not a lot. And most of the time, if you're using Controlled Demolition, then you're just going to be using your volatile rounds on targets that are already volatile, so it's kind of redundant. So I just decided to switch it up, just use Osteo, not worry about another void weapon outside of my rocket launcher, of course, and then just use my energy slot for the match game shields that I wasn't matching. So in this case, it's the Arc shielded harpies in the boss fight. Other than that, there's only one solar shield in this whole Nightfall, and it's the big giant shank in the plate room with all the shanks that you got to shoot. And that's not really a big deal. I mean, you just hit them with one vortex grenade and weaken them, and you can melt them. So, but there are quite a lot of arc shielded harpies in the boss fight, and they could be a pest. Like, you don't want to be sitting there trying to burn down a match game shield without without a matching element, or even with adaptive munitions. Like, it's just too slow. Like, there's a lot of harpies and you need to get rid of them quick because you got bigger targets that are that you're trying to manipulate and kill and survive, right? So like when you're dealing with wyverns and overload minotaurs, you don't want to be dealing with adds that have shields that you can't instantly break. So I decided to go with this bow here, which is also going to do my barrier for me, right? Because bows are in the artifact mods again as well, and this time they're for barrier, which I actually really like. I think bows are probably my favorite ranged weapon in the game for PvE. And this tripwire canary, which you get from the exo frame or doing the seasonal content, it's one of the seraphic weapons, and I've got it crafted. It's low level. I haven't changed any of the perks other than what little options it had when I crafted it. And surprisingly, it had explosive head available for level 1. So I think the other perk I have is shot swap or something like that. I'm not sure what it does, but basically it had explosive head, so that was perfect. I mean, it does exactly what you need. I'd pretty much be putting explosive head on any of my ranged weapons like scouts or bows anyways. Oh right, so the weapon I was using before this, which I was trying to pair with volatile rounds, was the new ritual weapon, the Velisex or whatever it is. It's the Void Pulse Rifle. It's a hack A, so it could be pretty useful in certain circumstances, like if you're using stasis or trying to shoot stasis crystals or frozen targets. or dealing with vehicles. But I thought it was going to be a pretty good weapon because it comes with repulsor brace, it comes with golden tricorn, it comes with kill clip. So I was rocking repulsor brace with golden tricorn, and it was just horrible. You know, maybe it's okay to use in low end content, but if you're going to rely on a pulse rifle for usually what you would, which would be mid to longer range targets, it's pretty bad. Like, it would take like 3-4 bursts to kill these red bars from range, and then with the recoil on the burst, you don't always hit all 3 shots. So you just like you find yourself reloading the thing like just to kill a basic ad, and that's the last thing you need. Like the Revision 0 exotic pulse, that's pretty good. Like I tried that out as well on here, and that kills stuff like even with the void, the 25% void burn. The Veli's X was not doing nearly as much damage as the Revision 0. Revision 0 is really good, but I ended up going with Osteo because I wanted to use Osteo. It's for my overload, and yeah, so and I wanted to level up Tripwire Canary as well. So overall, it's a really good bow. This Tripwire Canary, it's arc, as I said, so it's taking care of all the arc shields for me. It's got explosive head, level 1, straight out of the crafting table, and it's a viced weapon as well, so it benefits from Vice Stinger, which works differently, obviously, on a bow than it does on other weapons, where it refills your magazine randomly at random times. Instead, Vice Stinger on a bow, I think, just gives you enhanced draw time and maybe stability or some other stats. But basically, it just makes the bow better at random times, which I'm not going to complain about that. It's pretty good. So, yeah, and then just trying to do this nightfall with the bow, I leveled it up, like, I think I got 2 levels on it. And it makes this encounter here just so much easier. Like the Veli's X, even though it's void, like I would have been 2 to 3 shotting these shanks. Whereas I'm using a non-burn weapon, and I'm just one-shotting them. And sometimes I can collateral with the explosive head and take 2. So I don't recommend, if you're gonna pick a ranged weapon, which you should for this nightfall because there's a lot of ranged targets, the flying shanks, obviously. The whole first part of the boss of this nightfall, leading up to the boss fight, is very linear, and you're fighting targets at range. It's completely different to the boss fight, so you need a ranged weapon basically to get to the boss fight. Once you get to the boss fight, you don't really need a ranged weapon that much. But yeah, so I was able to use this on the Hydra and the boss because of the anti-barrier rounds, so I was able to pierce their shields and shoot them through it. But I was kind of hoping that Osteo Striga would work similarly to Le Monarch. The last few times I've done this nightfall I was using Le Monarch, and you can just shoot the Hydra and the boss's shield with Le Monarch. Even though it's not armor piercing, it's not anti-barrier, but the splash damage from the from the bow, the poison tick damage, penetrates the shield, and it'll hit the Hydra or the boss. So you could actually just stand out of range of of their fire, and you can just melt their shields down slowly, or just damage them slowly. So yeah, I was kind of hoping Osteo would work the same, and it kind of did. I noticed I got a few ticks on the boss, but it wasn't nearly as reliable as Le Monarch. For doing the baby Hydra though, it was fine. I think because the Hydra's a smaller target and its shield is closer to it actually, the splash damage was actually working through the shield on the baby. But yeah, and then I'm using my red herring rocket launcher. For the longest time I had Adrenaline Junkie on this, and I decided to switch it out for Enhanced Frenzy. So yeah, I wasted an Ascendant Alloy by swapping it, but I think it was worth it in the end. My main inspiration for wanting to swap it to Frenzy was Percy's, the giant wyvern in the Spire of the Watcher dungeon, because it's a boss which kind of well, you can use linears on it, but basically the reliable strat is to just use rockets on Percy's. And Red Herring's my only void rocket launcher, so Adrenaline Junkie doesn't do me any good on constant DPS on a boss, because Adrenaline Junkie relies pretty much solely on situational setup. Like, you got to get a grenade kill, and then all of a sudden you got Adrenaline Junkie ×5, and then you can do big burst damage, right? And get like 33% damage. So Adrenaline Junkie is better if there's ads to kill first with a grenade and then shoot your rocket at a target. But when you're just focusing solely on a boss fight for like 20 to 25 seconds, Adrenaline Junkie, you're likely never going to proc it even at the beginning, and then it's definitely not going to last throughout the boss fight. Whereas Frenzy, you could potentially keep Frenzy up for the whole duration of the boss fight. And so, but even outside of Spire of the Watcher, like, Frenzy's just all around a good perk. So even doing the solo content like I'm doing, I don't mind Frenzy at all. I kind of like the novelty of having Adrenaline Junkie, because it was the only grenade or rocket launcher that I have that has it, or had it. But that's fine. Frenzy's more reliable damage perk. You get better reload speed, which I'm not going to complain about at all, because rockets are a pain to reload. And even though I have field prep on it, it's mainly for the ammo reserves. You just get more ammo from field prep, but you do, like, yes, you can reload your weapon faster if you crouch, but like, you're not going to remember to crouch, nor is it going to be practical to crouch all the time to reload. And if you try doing it behind your rally barricade, you might end up blowing yourself up if you accidentally hit your rally barricade when you're crouching up and down trying to reload. But so with Frenzy, I don't really have to worry so much about crouching to reload or getting respite and finding cover so I can go and reload slowly. With Frenzy up, I can reload fairly quickly no matter what. And I think it's 15% extra damage that it does. So yeah. So overall, I'd say it's better than Adrenaline Junkie. Especially if you can reload faster and dump 2 rockets on a target, then that's more valuable than 1 rocket with Adrenaline Junkie and then 1 without, with a slow reload in between. Alright, so here I'm at the boss fight. I was honestly a little nervous going into this boss fight on Titan, because as I said, I haven't done it on Titan yet. But I've done this Nightfall solo enough to know the spawns, the timing, where to bait the enemies, that, you know, I was able to get through it. This was actually my second attempt on this loadout. First time I randomly died to, I think, the 3 or 4 barriers. I decided to leave up the 2 barriers after I killed the wyverns and spawn in the next wave, so that I had 4 barriers up, and I think they all sniped me at the same time. But yeah, it was kind of a dumb death. But I didn't want to let this happen again here. So basically, once the boss spawns in, you've got 2 overloads with a bunch of ads, and you got the baby hydra. So you can funnel both of the overloads if you let them see you in that middle hallway. You can funnel them both down there. I'm using overload grenades. Osteo is also overloaded. So if you can get a double stun off both the Minotaurs when they're in that hallway with a weakening grenade and a rocket, and then swap back to Osteo, you should just melt them. Not to mention they're going to be volatile as soon as you hit them with that nade or shield throw, which means that as you're doing Osteo damage, they're going to be taking even more damage because they're volatile. That's a pretty good example right there. But yeah, so the first phase of the boss's health, you've got 4 overloads total. They spawn in pairs. The second wave of overloads only comes in once you've taken the baby hydra's health down enough. So usually about half of his first health bar. And so one thing that you can do with the baby hydra is, as soon as you get his health down half, so you've killed the first 2 overloads that came in, then you're working on the baby hydra's health. Once his first third of health is down about halfway, pay attention to the left side of your screen where it says Vex reinforcements have arrived, or a champion appears. I think it says a champion appears for the overload. That's when you know there's going to be 2 more overloads on the way. So what you can do is then you can melt the baby hydra to get him to go away. Take off that first third of his health bar completely. So hit him with a couple rockets if you need to. Just get him out of there. You don't have to. You can keep him in there, but it means that you're gonna have to avoid the baby hydra while you're trying to deal with the next 2 overloads. So it's just better if you can nuke the baby hydra to get him out of there, and then you take care of the 2 overloads without worrying about them. Then once you've done that, then it's just you and the boss. So you've got to take the boss's health down. You have to take the whole first third of his health off. And I try not to waste too many rockets, but I actually had a lot of rocket drops, or heavy ammo drops, in this fight. So I knew I had like 3 bricks out there that I can go fetch. So I wasn't being too conservative with my rockets. I'm also using double primary weapons, which means I get more heavy ammo drops. But so once you've done that, then the boss goes away, and then the baby hydra comes out, and this time you've got the wyverns. So you get 2 wyverns right away with a bunch of arc shielded harpies and 2 barriers that usually stay outside the whole time, so you don't have to worry about the hydras if you're inside this left room. But the wyverns are definitely #1 threat. Like, they're probably even a bigger threat than the overload minotaurs. They're a bit easier to kill, but they're deadlier. So I try to reserve my super for the wyverns specifically, if I need it. I don't always just pop my super just for the sake of it, but Sentinel Shield is definitely a good super to go with, better than Bubble, I would say, on in this boss fight, because you can take care of a lot of ads with it and the wyverns all in one, you know, super. And another good thing that makes Sentinel Shield a good super is Controlled Demolition. So if you are going to use Controlled Demolition, then you're going to benefit. Everything that Sentinel Shield is doing is making everything volatile. So, and just generally, if you're going to use Sentinel Shield as your super, you should consider using Controlled Demolition with it. It just makes it that much better. So then, once you take care of the 2 wyverns, then you can, there's the 2 barriers that are outside. You can safely get rid of them because the boss is gone. So then once you do that, then you've got to take the baby, its health down, the next health bar, about halfway again, until you see Vex reinforcements have arrived, and then you know you've got 2 more wyverns on the way with another 2 barriers. So you got to be ready for it. Make sure you got your grenade ready, make sure you got your shield ready, whatever. Make sure your rockets are reloaded. And then as far as the build, like for mods and stuff that I went for, I've been using a lot of Phantom Might and High Energy Fire on my Void builds lately, because you get, you know, a huge boost of damage if you can get. This was a satisfying wyvern kill. It was just circumstance that they ended up both deciding to go to that right side doorway. I didn't even know that that's where they were. I was kind of like looking around for them, and then I just happened. Oh, they're both there at the same time. Perfect. 1 vortex grenade, 1 rocket, 1 shield throw. Spray a little bit of osteo, and they're both dead at the same time. So that was pretty lucky. If you could do that, take advantage of it. But as I was saying, for my build mods, I decided not to go for any damage mods this time. Osteo, I haven't even infused my Osteo streak yet. It's still 1580, and I'm doing a 1610 Master Nightfall, and Osteo is still pretty much melting everything. So adding High Energy Fire to it, you know, yeah, it would be nice, but it's really not necessary. And the main thing is survivability in this boss fight. Like, you don't need to do... You have enough damage at your disposal that you don't really need to upgrade it by using all those mods. You know, maybe if you're using like a linear fusion rifle, or a sword or something else where it's going to take a little bit more time to kill the champions and the wyverns. But with a Void rocket launcher, I'm already matching the 25% damage bonus burn, and I've got Frenzy on it, so usually like 1 or 2 rockets and I've done enough damage to whatever target is in front of me to be able to finish it easily. Having Phantom Might or High Energy Fire is not gonna make me save any more rockets, basically. It's not that much of a difference. So instead I went with Well of Tenacity with Elemental Time Dilation and Seeking Wells. So what that does is I get 9 seconds of 50% more damage resistance when I pick up a Void Well, which is huge. And Well of Tenacity by itself is not that good because you only get that damage resistance for 3 seconds. But if you use Elemental Time Dilation, which is the stasis mod, so as long as one of your armor pieces has stasis energy, then you could put that on there. and it increases the Wall of Tenacity to 9 seconds. So it's like a 300% increase, which is really good. Like proportionally, it's much better than Font of Might with Elemental Time Dilation, because you only get 50% more time with Font of Might. But for whatever reason, the Wall of Tenacity gets a pretty massive bonus. You don't need 2 copies of Wall of Tenacity, you just need the 1 copy with Time Dilation, and boom, you get 6 more seconds extra. So it's very good. Along with Seeking Wells is also good, and then I'm making wells from my grenades and my shield throws, which is pretty easy wells because I've got Heart of Inmost Light, so my grenades and my shield throws are empowered. Kill stuff very easily with them, and then the void wells come to me, and then I've got damage resistance, which probably saved me more times than I realized throughout this boss fight. Like how that rocket just went right between the Overlord's legs and missed him. But yeah, another thing that I considered in reasoning with not going for like Font of Might High Energy Fire was that Volatile, when you make targets volatile, they're taking more damage than normal, right? So that's already a damage buff. So I really didn't feel the need to go crazy with damage buffs. Instead, I wanted survivability. Especially because, like I said, this was my first solo Flawless Master attempt with Titan. And with attrition being the weekly modifier and all that, I just figured you can never really go wrong, even if it ends up being overkill with having extra damage resistance. A lot of that is just trial and error. Like I noticed with Stag Rift. On the Stag Rift you can do Well of Tenacity as well. But I find a lot of times, unless it's Grandmasters, it's just overkill, because generally speaking your Stag Rift is going to keep you alive through most things anyways. So just adding like another damage resistance buff on top of that makes no noticeable difference basically. And that may very well be the case here for Sentinel Titan as well, because I've got overshields on demand. So it's pretty hard to die when you're standing behind a barricade. Not just because the barricade is a shield which is blocking damage, but it's the overshield that you get. Nice thing about shield throw here in this room is you can just chuck it and it'll bounce off all the walls and will pretty much reliably hit at least something while it's ricocheting off of everything. Shield bash is also really strong. I generally prefer using shield bash just for the mobility aspect of it. Like being able to move from point A to point B super quickly, which is really nice. But as far as using shield bash to do damage, not so much. I prefer it just to move around. But because I'm using Controlled Demolition, I wanted to use my melee and my grenade to do damage. I didn't want to just rely on my grenade. Not only that, but with Heart of Inmost Light, spending your charged melee benefits your barricade and your grenade and your ability regen. So if you're just shield bashing around and not hitting anything and killing anything, you're not proccing Heart of Inmost Light. So if you want to proc Heart of Inmost Light, it's better to use Shield Throw. And if you want to use Controlled Demolition, and you don't want to be up in the middle of every fight because you're trying to survive, then Shield Throw's the play. Because you can pick any range at target, throw your shield at them, make them volatile, proc Heart of Inmost Light, and there you go. And I actually didn't even start using Controlled Demolition very much at all until this season. And another reason for me using it was because I was having so much fun on Gyrfalcons with volatile rounds, and then I kind of remembered that I could use Controlled Demolition on Titan. Before this, I was like pretty much religiously using Bastion and Offensive Bulwark. But Controlled Demolition is really good. Not only that, but like another thing I was playing around with Inspire the Watcher was I noticed that you can use your charged melee on the supplicants and survive them. Meaning that even though they're explosive units, or like you can never shield bash like a Cursed Thrall or a Screed and expect to live, right? You shield bash one or two of them and you're dead. But with the supplicants, even though they're exploder units, Inspire the Watcher, you can shield bash them and they don't blow you up. It's like they don't blow up when you bash them. They only blow up on their own accord. So I wanted to use shield bash in the Percy's fight, mess around with it, and Controlled Demolition basically heals you when you kill volatile targets that are nearby, right? So if you shield bash and Controlled Demolition, then every kill that you get from your shield bash is going to heal you on spot. So it works really good for Spire the Watcher, just shield bashing the supplicants. But either way, like my logic still kind of stands the same for Glassway and Heart of Inmost Light in general. I felt like Shield Throw was the better play here. So these barriers are the hard ones to take care of. You just have to give up on them sometimes, because the problem is the boss is out here for the whole time. So this phase of Wyverns is different than the last phase, because in the last phase the boss goes away, so he's not outside for you to worry about. You can actually go out there when there's just the two barriers left and easily take care of them. But in this phase, the boss is out there the whole time, and he's gonna try and kill you while you're trying to kill the barrier, so it's a complete pain. But if you kind of bait him away, I found that this spot here, the same thing if you're in the right room, the middle hallway is always the best spot to bait the barriers to, because for whatever reason the boss doesn't stick around to blast you through that middle corridor. He kind of just wants to go left or right, which leaves the middle open, and the barriers like to stand up on those pedestals. Sometimes they'll like teleport from one side to the other, but they generally will go there and try to shoot you from there, which makes it easy for you to just like put a barricade down, peek the corner, and take them out like that. And the bow was very good at taking out the barrier shields. Like, reliably, it's always 2 shots. But you do have to watch out with these barriers, because that was why I was running sniper resistance. If you get like 2 shots at the same time, you're dead. And Like if you're full health and you get sniped by one of them, you're like you'll be critical. You can die super easily to the barriers. So sniper resistance is pretty useful, I find. But anyways, that's it. So hope you enjoyed. If you do, leave a like, comment. I'm happy to talk with people in the comment section, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.